Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seriously Loco, the Seriously Crazy fan podcast for El Paso Locomotive FC. I'm Phil Bakke, and I'm joined tonight by Christian Canales. Christian, welcome. How are we doing?
Good to be here. It's a busy week. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get right into it.
Yeah. Big time week. We'll be talking about the insanity at Southwest University Park on Saturday night. Phoenix 4, El Paso Locomotive 4. We'll dive into what exactly transpired and all of that. We'll look ahead to the Open Cup on Wednesday because we got a 3-match week, and then again look ahead to the Derby on Saturday evening out in, well, I guess afternoon, really, out in Albuquerque. I think it's a 3 p.m. kickoff Mountain Time.
Did not realize that.
Yeah. So not really sure what that's about, but that is apparently what's happening. It's nice for me out east, but but yeah, so big stuff, a big week for Locomotive, and a big sort of opportunity missed, I guess. Like, you were present in Southwest University Park for the 4-4 draw on Saturday. I'm curious just like what it was like in the stadium, and then also, you know, we had on the opening day maybe a draw that felt like a win, and this was maybe talked about, but was it a draw that felt more like a loss this time?
Oh yeah, I'll answer that part first. I mean, I think definitely there was a lot of positive vibes in the stadium for about 70 minutes. That's about as many goals as we've ever seen in there, except for the Vegas 5-4 from a couple years ago. And I guess what was special about this one is that as the game went on, before things kind of went south, it wasn't like a cagey, match. It wasn't, 1-0, 2-1, that kind of thing. We opened up a 3-goal lead at one point, for a decent part of the match. And so it was good. It was kind of like positivity and just excitement that I think that SWEP had been missing for a while. Unfortunately, as we know, things didn't end so well, and things went downhill pretty quickly, almost as fast as they went uphill for us. But I think that it was a rough, kind of bitter pill to swallow, but there's a lot of good things to take away from it too.
Yeah. We'll kind of follow the flow of the game, which obviously it's pretty positive, and then maybe a little bit of a dip, and then really positive, and then doom and gloom towards the end, I guess. But talking about the team, not a ton to discuss in terms of changes, except for, me and Mika spoke last week about the fact that fullback was really the only position that we saw, maybe a little bit of interchangeability in terms of Gabby Torres and Memo Diaz did not start in game one. It was Quezada and Ricky Ruiz. Now this time out, it was just a complete flip where Memo and Gabby Torres start. And then we had the change, just after the hour mark. This time was the exact opposite. So it's like the fullbacks were really the only big change. But keeping the continuity, it did seem like it worked, especially, early on. It felt like there was a rhythm to this team that we maybe haven't seen in like over a year.
Yeah, and it was one of the things that I was a little bit worried about with Cabrera coming into the season, because we know last year after he came in, it was a total crapshoot on who was going to be in the lineup, where they were going to be playing, and that might have been just a factor of he didn't know who he had.
Sure.
and those mid-season signings, who gels with who and who works well with who, that kind of stuff. And so he may have just been trying to pretty much prepare for the next season as he came in the middle of last year. But after listening to the post-match with Moreno, he talked about how he just feels like this year there is just way more camaraderie and way more just a better sense of team than there was last year. Guys are, I think he just used the words, guys are just more comfortable with each other.
Sure.
And he also talked about just how guys are a little more not so uptight. Everyone's kind of having fun out there, and there's a lot less finger pointing and stuff like that going on. And I think it's good that they were able to kind of get a full off season together and really get to know each other, because I think that, like you said, it contributes to that just kind of consistency, and I think that the team will be better for it as the season goes on.
Well, it didn't take long for Locomotive to get going. They were pretty much on the front foot. Like, as the game got started, they earn a corner. Not very good defending from Phoenix, it has to be said. But poor clearance falls to the feet, or I should say to the right foot of Beto Avila, who, we didn't get to see that much of in an attacking sense, I would say, against Colorado Springs. The technique on the volley to just hammer it into that top left-hand corner. It was a nice sight to behold, and maybe the sort of goal that Locomotive haven't scored much of in recent years, but got Locomotive off to a really strong start.
Yeah, the dude's a player. I was really impressed with what he did on Saturday against Phoenix. I think he's just a really solid attacker. He kind of does everything. He can run, he can move the ball around in the box. He can hit the ball, as we saw. So I'm excited to see more from him. And I think just with a lot of these signings we talked about at the beginning of the season, just weren't really sure, because the strategy has just been a little bit different than what we've been used to, as far as bringing in players. But so far, I think it's paying off. There hasn't been anyone that we've seen that's come into the squad in the offseason that I haven't been at least a little bit impressed with.
It's Beto was very good, I thought, and a key sort of the one tweak maybe that Wilmer did make in the attack was not personnel wise, but he actually shifted Toomey into like a center forward role, and then it was Beto out on the right. And I think it led to some more interesting sort of interchanges and runs up front. Toomey got way more involved in the play than, compared to how he was in game one, where we said him and Beto were both kind of out of the game for much. It was kind of all going through Moreno, which is fine. Obviously, we want things to land at Moreno's feet, and we'll talk more about that. But I think that change did seem to make the whole structure make a little bit more sense, and maybe Toomey was able to work out how that sort of false nine, or however you want to like classify what he's asking of that center forward, Wilmer. It just felt like both of them kind of more naturally found themselves in good positions and able to impact the game that way.
Yeah, and you could see it every time that we got on a counter. There was just, I don't know, it seemed like there were more of us. We were able to just get more men forward, and that contributed to a couple of our goals.
The second goal comes down that right hand side, but actually it's Palermo Ortiz who plays the initial pass, and a very, very good one into the feet of, I believe it's Memo, who lays the ball off for Moreno. That initial through ball, Moreno not able to initially get to it, does eventually.
One way or another.
Was it in Rakowski's hands? Was it not? The ref said no, and maybe karmically Locomotive paid for this in the long run. But Amando able to round the keeper and score. And it was sort of this initial entry pass from Ortiz, and then a really nice run infield laid off for Moreno that sets it up. Or was it Beto who lays off the pass?
No, you were right.
It was Memo.
It
is. Yeah, it is Memo. So yeah, Memo lays off a really nice through ball, and Moreno able to put us up 2-0 just past the half-hour mark.
Yeah, and while we're on that subject of that goal, can I just say like how impressed I've been with Palermo Ortiz, man. He has been outstanding for us in that center back position, and you know, that kind of like mobility that I'm trying to think, have we ever had a center back who can move, who can get forward with like without us having to be concerned about it?
I would say yeah, I mean, the only person who necessarily comes to mind is maybe Andrew Fox.
Oh yeah,
in terms of mobility.
Yeah.
But even then, he played in so many different positions that that we rarely, it wasn't until maybe 2021 that we actually saw him like consistently at center back. So yeah, I would say, I mean, this is probably one of the few who did stuff like this. I think Bense was one who maybe did things not in the same way that Ortiz is, maybe more of a passing range than a running range.
Yeah, that's a good shot too. But man, he's fun to watch, I think, because you know he can just start an attack all by himself all the way from the back, and I just think that just gives the defense a whole lot more to worry about.
Absolutely. Being able to make those defense splitting passes as well. I mean, he essentially takes out the entirety of Phoenix in a single pass, and then it's just a very simple. Well, I say very simple. It's a really well weighted pass from Memo Diaz to get it into that area of uncertainty in between Moreno and the keeper, where Rakowski's not able to claim it cleanly, we'll say, and Moreno's able to come away with it. There was the first cracks, I guess, start to show in first half stoppage time, and it was a corner from Phoenix. I would say Damian Rivera was like their danger man pretty much the entire first half, in terms of he was giving Memo some fits down Locomotive's right hand side, and not just Memo, he was giving everybody fits, but Memo obviously as the wing back on that side. They earn a corner. And I would say this has been maybe an issue with Locomotive for quite some time, in that like it just seems like we're not that good at defending corners and being proactive in going and like claiming the ball or like really attacking these headers. This ball sort of floats in, and I know we were just praising Palermo Ortiz, but he kind of gets caught under Noble Okello, and it's just it's sort of a very straightforward goal for Phoenix, and I would say a disappointing one to concede for Locomotive.
Yeah, and I mean, not to let them off, because they definitely should have defended better, but also like that guy is freakishly tall. He's a big guy. So like I think that he gets ahead on that ball probably 6 times out of 10, but you know, we need to do a better job of making it more difficult for them, I think, to add to your point.
I think there's just a little bit to I mean, the ball in is good. I think a couple of people get caught kind of flat, and it's Memo's supposed to win the ball at the near post, but it's over his head. He's like not getting anywhere near it. And so I think they were all maybe counting on him to make the intervention. And it's just, I mean, the ball was well delivered in that it beats Memo, but once it beats Memo, it shouldn't then be sort of like a tap, like, or a nod home. I think that we got to be able to contest like more actively for that ball, but it meant that they went into halftime 2-1. And out of the break, literally seconds from second half kickoff, Locomotive were flying like out of the blocks in the second half, which has definitely not always been the case. It feels like we're often on the wrong end of that. And maybe I just have tons of scar tissue from last year, but it felt like okay, like we can go in the locker room and regroup after that first half, and we would just come out and concede immediately. Locomotive came out flying and really hit Phoenix with kind of a 1-2 punch, but the first goal in particular, it ended up being a tap in for Gabby Torres.
Yeah, and so many of these goals, with the exception of Beto's, I think so many of these goals just come down to poor defending. Yeah. Because it's a really good pass by Avila across the box. Moreno does a good job of leaving it alone, but Gabby Torres is completely unmarked. They have no idea he's back there. So it was a simple tap in for him.
And the initial run from Beto, I can't remember who it is I can't see who it is who made the initial challenge on Beto as he just sprinted past him. Like it's sort of a lazy leg from Phoenix, and it's one of those where it's like, if you're going to make that challenge, you basically have to foul him if you're not going to win the ball.
It was Traore, actually.
Oh, well, I guess he made up for it later. But that was like particularly poor in that Beto just goes past him completely. And it wasn't anything, it's a good run, but it's just a straight line. There's nothing crazy he did. He just goes straight past him. Yeah. And then is able to square. And a good assist for Beto Avila to add to his goal. And Gabby Torres scoring against his, former club. Notably did not do the muted, I'm not going to celebrate against my former team. Like he went ahead and celebrated.
Yeah, I was curious if that only applies like when you're playing away. Because I mean, there's no one, there weren't very many people from Phoenix there.
He's like, no one from Phoenix is watching this. Yeah. That's actually, that was a logic Luis Suarez applied against Liverpool, actually, and he got himself in some hot water for celebrating scoring in the Champions League, like in Barcelona. Because he was like, well, I'm not at Anfield or whatever. Yeah. And that, and then that was before the 4-0 and the whole, anyways. So it was only a couple of minutes later. You said Moreno did well to leave the ball, because he kind of dummies it almost for Gabby Torres' goal, where he just lets it through and gives Torres the tap in. It's a good thing he didn't leave the ball alone on the corner. So another poor clearance, but Amano Moreno scores what we thought would be the goal of the week, maybe a contender for goal of the season. And unfortunately overshadowed, which we'll get to. But Amano Moreno with the overhead kick, absolutely brilliant. And at 4-1, Locomotive everyone thought sort of out of sight, game over.
Yeah, and man, I didn't realize that fourth goal happened so early. We scored 4 in 50 minutes, and then we're able to get nothing after that. We should have had one, but which we'll get to. Yeah. But as far as the scoreboard goes, nothing for 40 minutes after that, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, the goal, what a strike, man. And he was asked about it after the match, and he talks about that it wasn't a fluke. Like he actively practices those. He says he loves it. He's not afraid to throw his body around, and he's not afraid of getting hurt doing that stuff. So good for him for being able to put that to use in a real game situation.
Yeah. Worth saying, it's not in the highlights package. So if you did not watch the game, like you said, Christian, there was a fifth goal. Palermo Ortiz had the ball in the back of the net for Locomotive, and it's a really odd one because it was from a set piece. He's forward for the set piece, and it was from like a deflected shot that like comes to him. And he tucks it away from a narrow angle. It's actually a really good finish. And it was flagged for offside, which at the time I was like, maybe. And then when you look at it back, you're like, there's almost no way that he can be offside. Like they're defending in their own goal, essentially, Phoenix. Mm-hmm. And I just don't know how he could have been offside, like, let alone, it's tight. Like I could see how it was given or whatever. It's just like, I'm just not sure how it could have been.
Yeah, in the press box, we were looking at it for a while too, and we thought maybe it might have been off the free kick that got deflected to him, but even after we looked at it several times, we couldn't see it, and we have a colleague, I guess we'll call him, from Phoenix, who's in the press box too, and even he was saying that that should be a goal. There was no way it was offside.
Yeah,
but nonetheless, the referees were severely lacking in several departments that day.
Yeah, I mean, so we talked about the no call on the Rakowski, like maybe he's got his hands on the ball, then the offside for the Palermo Ortiz goal. The weird thing about this one is that, like, I didn't notice the referee a ton outside of those two decisions, really, until Locomotive were ahead by 3 goals. And then it really started to become clear that there were a lot of fouls. I mean, we were very, me and Mika made the mistake of being very complimentary of last week's referee. And unfortunately that did not hold. That trend did not hold. So Kalin Radosov was the referee tonight or on Saturday. And it felt like, now I want to be clear about, because I did get some comments about my comments about the referee. And I want to be clear that I'm not saying the referee is the reason that Locomotive dropped points. But, like, when Phoenix is able to commit fouls that Locomotive are committing and being booked for, like the same sort of circumstances, same, level of intensity, whatever. If one team is being booked and the other team is not, in basically any situation, including like on the break, Jeroma was fouled quite a bit when he's like on the turn, getting into midfield, like an easy yellow card, right? When you just kick the guy, like kind of breaking into midfield, breaking up a promising attack, tactical fouls, whatever you want to call it. Those are like very easy bookings. And he was whistling Phoenix for fouls. He actually whistled more fouls on Phoenix than he did Locomotive, but he didn't give them a single yellow card in 17 fouls that they committed. He didn't issue a single booking, while Locomotive committed 12 fouls and had four yellow cards given and 1 red card, which I will clarify was just the one. Tony Alfaro was not booked earlier in the game, so that's why, because people were confused that they thought he got a red card but somehow stayed on the field and all this, which he had not been booked. But anyway, suffice all that, I say all that just to say that when the field is sort of tilted that way, and Locomotive from the 58th minute on received a booking basically every like 10 minutes, while Phoenix received none, and by the way, scored 3 goals to equalize this game. Like, it does feel, I'm not saying that it's down to the referee, but I am saying it does impact the game.
No, for sure. Phoenix, doesn't matter if you call 50 fouls on them. If they feel like, a free kick from midfield is not a consequence, right. Especially when when without that foul, we're, 3-on-2 or 3-on-3, whatever the case may be. So there's no incentive to play a clean game. So it does, like you said, it does have an impact when we're the ones getting, who are having to change the way we play because of these bookings.
The game really changed, I think it's fair to say. 67th minute, Wilmer decides to start making changes, which understandable given the fact that, past the hour mark in a 3-game week, you're up 3 goals. You're thinking we probably need to start resting some folks, getting some of the minutes out of the legs. So he takes off Toomey and then does the fullback change of Ricky Ruiz and Alvaro Quezada come on for Memo and Gabby Torres. 2 minutes later, Remy Cabral scores, and it would be probably harsh to say that the subs, allow the goal or something like that. But it's probably not coincidental that in that space of like 3 players have just come on the field or kind of getting up to speed with the game, all that sort of stuff, Locomotive are found decently open. There's an attempted clearance early, like sort of from Wahab Akwe, which falls at the feet of Isan Sako, who shoots. It's going miles wide, and it just happens to land at the feet of Remy Cabral. Like, he horribly scuffs it. It lands at the feet of Remy Cabral, who kills it dead, and then just puts the shot away and gets Phoenix back rolling with 20 minutes to go.
Yeah, I mean, that goal was a mess. Like you said, it didn't look like anyone really knew what the mission was at that point. And I think that's probably the most, that was the ugliest goal, I think, in terms of the ones Phoenix was able to put away for us, because there's just so much we could have gone better. That could have gone better. Starting with the clearance. I mean, that Akwe has to do better in that situation. I'm sure he knows it too. But yeah, I mean, everything after that, the ball's just bouncing around the box, and we just don't close Cabral down on time.
Yeah, it's a weird one too, because the shape of the team as we're chasing back, the ball goes out to the right-hand side to Sako, it was, I actually don't know who it was out on the right-hand side for Phoenix, but anyways, they like, we're chasing back, and it's Tony Alfaro and Wahab Akwe are the only 2 defenders like behind the ball. Everybody else is chasing back. So clearly, like, obviously, without going back and analyzing the whole clip, like, we lose the ball and get caught kind of in transition, and we're not able to get bodies back. But then once Akwe deals with the initial ball, everybody sort of turns and looks at where the clearance is going, and Ortiz, Akwe, and Alfaro like all have an opportunity to go to Remy Cabral. Like, somebody has the opportunity to go stand on the one attacker in front of the goal. And they all stand off him. Like, nobody gets goal side of Remy Cabral. And yes, it's extremely lucky that the ball goes to his feet, but we had the opportunity. Like, I hate to dig about, like, or maybe even, I think it might even be Quezada standing here. Oh yeah, it is Quezada, because Palermo is actually jogging back from like way up the field. He's like just coming back into camera as the ball goes in the net. So anyways, it's Quezada who is standing next to Remy Cabral and like just doesn't stand on the other side of him. Like, and he's got to be more alive to the fact that, like, hey, this one guy needs somebody standing between him and the goal. And he's the person closest to him and just kind of lets him occupy that space, unfortunately. So I don't think that'll be a particular, let's just say the last half hour of this game will not be a very like good watch for the team. I don't think in many areas, aside from giving up the goals, I think there's a lot of stuff that they'll look back on as not being particularly great. And it could have been worse, I think, is the unfortunate part. Like after we concede the goal to make it 4-2, it's basically all Phoenix. Like and not in the sense of like, oh, Locomotive are just like kind of shutting up shop and trying to see out the game. It was like we were giving up like extremely good chances like all over the place.
Yeah, Jamali has a great save at I think like 75, 76 minutes in, where who was it?
I think
Avayevu.
Avayevu,
yeah. From the top of the box, just the rocket shot that Jamali's able to, to get both hands on and parry it out. But you're right. I mean, it could have been worse because they started running all over us.
And so the third goal, it's Isan Sako this time. Now, I do have a bit of a bone to pick because I think Frank DeRoma is fouled in the build-up to this goal. I think it's very clear that he gets mugged out on the sideline. Now, the shape when DeRoma loses the ball is not the shape of a team that is trying to see out the last 10 minutes of a 2-goal lead. Like, yes, we're caught in possession because of what I think was an illegal. Like, I think he is fouled. He's kicked like multiple times. He's being held, but Palermo Ortiz like commits completely. Kofi Tumasi, who came on as a substitute in the meantime for Robert Coronado for his debut, he bites, and we had Beto Avila like tracking back to try to win the ball. And so 3 players get taken out by one back heel by Akello that finds Rivera. And now Rivera is running at the defense with it's only Akwe and Alfaro tracking back. And he's got Remy Cabral and whoever's out on the right. Oh, it's Sako.
So, the goal scorer.
So he's got 2 options against 2 defenders, like, and there's 3 of them running at the Locomotive goal, and he plays the ball out to Sako, and it's a good finish. Like I would say it's a pretty good finish in the end, like near post. But it was all about the fact that yes, we get caught in possession, but even getting caught in possession, like why? When you're holding a 2-goal lead like this, why are there only 2 people playing defense? Like, even when you have the ball, you would expect there to be many more people behind the ball than when, if our midfield has the ball just inside their half, that's not a trigger for like every single person to go join the attack. Like when you're trying to protect a 2-goal lead.
Yeah. And 2 of them actually don't come up until they take the ball off of DeRoma. I think it. I'm trying to see
because Palermo bites
and Quezada. I think they're the ones that come and try and crash in on the ball after DeRoma loses it, and that's what leaves us. That's what leaves. Man, I'm losing track. Alfaro and Akwe on such an island out there.
Yeah.
So I think that's. The decision to try and close down on the ball all the way up there is really what hurt us.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you want to call it a lack of discipline or whatever you want to, but that seems to be the wrong choice. Yeah. That leads to the goal.
And then I don't even know what to say about 4-4. It's the 86th minute, almost the 87th. And so it was funny because you and I were talking in our group chat like throughout the game as we typically do. And whenever that's happening, you always have a bit of a, like, I'm on a delay. And so whatever's happening in front of you is like you are a few seconds ahead of me. It's not crazy. It's not like a minute or something like the Premier League or something like that, but it is like there's a bit of time.
Like 10 to 15 seconds usually.
Yeah. So you put in the group chat, you got to be fucking kidding me. And I thought, because Phoenix is on the attack, like as I'm watching, and I'm thinking like, oh my God, they're going to score from this. But the initial danger is dealt with. And so I'm like, what is he even talking about? Because like the goal would have happened by now.
Yeah.
And then this, whatever you want to call this, which I choose to call it, I know it's being called goal of the season, all this stuff. Here's what I think. This is a clearance.
Absolutely. He has no idea where the goal is when he puts his head down to strike that ball.
There's absolutely no way he's going for goal. I hate to be whatever. That might sound like sour grapes, whatever. That had just as much chance of going into the garden seats as it did the top corner.
Yeah, because I mean, you could tell, because it's not like Jamali is miles off his line. He's not even outside of I forget what that is, the 6-yard box. Like,
yeah,
it just happened to be like he just can't get to it because it's hit at like the perfect angle. Like it dips at just the right time where no sane person is thinking that, I've got to get back to the line to cover that goal. Because even from the press box, it looks like it's going over. I didn't believe it when it went in.
No.
So yeah, I refuse. I will never accept that was an intentional goal. And I think I was looking at some clips from that the Phoenix Rising podcast took pitch side after the match. And I'm pretty sure that Traore even admits that he was not going for goal there.
No, he was booting it. Like he was avoiding a count and it ends up going in. So extremely, extremely harsh. I think like part of it Locomotive's own doing in that one, as much as I hate to say this out loud, but like, I think we do have to remember that this is a team that is absolutely not used to seeing games out. They are used to chasing. And it felt like even when they scored to make it 4-2, it felt like Locomotive was trying to score a fifth more than they were trying to keep it at 4-2. Like they seemed desperate when it's like, no, you're fully in the driver's seat. Like you're the ones who get to control like what happens next because you have the lead. They can't force you to play at a high tempo. They can't force you not to waste time. They can't force you. Like there's all kinds of shit you can do. And it just felt like maybe the approach in the last 20 minutes was a little naive from Locomotive.
Yeah. And I think it's also just a little bit of like, I don't know I think you said desperation already, but I feel like just really not necessarily trying to like, they just wanted to win too much, I think. And you can't fault them for it,
Of course.
You never want to see your team necessarily park the bus, but like, I think it's just a matter of finding that, that sweet spot.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, it might have just been a little bit too aggressive, but on the whole, if we have to go in one direction or the other this season, bring the aggression, I guess. I'm choosing to remain positive about this result, even though it was definitely undesirable. Like I said at the beginning, I think there's a lot of a lot of good things to take away from this result.
I would tend to agree. I think the fact that you'd rather reel guys in than try to tell them to get more passionate or more intent. Like you can't really tell a team to be like more motivated or more aggressive. Like it's harder to kind of give people that push than it is to say, okay, you've got plenty of passion, plenty of intensity, plenty of like giving your all for the team. I need you to like recognize the moment and know how to like cool things down. And I'd much rather they have to do that than the opposite, which is, you know, I felt like at times last year that was the vibe where it was like, hey, when are you guys going to start giving a shit? Right? Like it feels like that's at least in this team, but even in this case, like I think the emotions of the moment sort of got the better of them, and they sort of let themselves get dragged into an emotional contest when they had already done everything they needed to do to win the game. Like they just needed to chill. They needed to kill it, right? And they let it just kind of keep being this kind of crazy emotional game all the way through the end, which Phoenix eventually fed off to find a way back into it.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's just a learning curve, but it's just a little bit frustrating because that feels like a habit that we've been in even since we first joined the league. That's just part of been kind of who we are as a club. No matter, you know, who's on the touchline or who's on the field, is we kind of always kind of fall victim to the moment. But we'll see. They still have plenty of time to turn a new leaf.
The one very consequential, I talked about the bookings from the referee, but the one very consequential one is the fact that Frank DeRoma sees a second yellow. It was kind of a weird sequence where I'm pretty sure he gets booked for dissent. Like they have it on him getting his yellow card in the 80th minute, which I don't know if it was connected to anything in particular, because it's basically right before Sacco scores. But his second yellow, I've watched it back and I'm like, this also shouldn't have been a yellow card. There's like, I can see why the referee's given it, I guess. But it's basically like there's a dribble into midfield. DeRoma slides, but like kind of comes up short of where the Phoenix player is, and he gets kind of lent into. Like, I don't actually think there's any contact between DeRoma's boot and the Phoenix player. Like, I think he anticipates the contact and sort of goes over.
The more I look at it, it just looks like that Phoenix player just absolutely lowers his shoulder into him.
Yeah. And so I think it's like extremely unfortunate. And it was sort of, DeRoma was almost trying to make a point where he's like, because it took him forever to leave the field. And it was primarily because like, he's like, this has been happening like one way the whole night. And now I'm getting sent off for basically like two innocuous things. And he definitely let the referee hear, I guess, what was going on. But the consequence of this is that he won't be available for the Derby, which is problematic because he's been definitely our best midfield player. And we don't really know the status of Eric Calvillo, who missed out from the 18 again. So I would say it's probably fingers crossed that Eric's available for New Mexico, because options in central midfield start to get pretty thin. I mean, it would basically be Kofi Tumasi would need to start, which we haven't been able to see much of him. We just saw him in the context of the end of this game. So who knows? But that would definitely be a big blow to. Well, it is a big blow for DeRoma to have to sit out a game when he's just had a very bright start to the season.
Yeah, and that just kind of like the scrappy player like him is like exactly the kind of thing that we need against New Mexico, because in that that match, tempers run hot, and so that's the kind of player you need to kind of get in their head and knock them off their game. So yeah, definitely unfortunate.
Well, I guess anything else or any key things maybe out of the presser that you caught that you'd want to get across before we start talking about the Open Cup?
Yeah, I mean, it's they seem like from what I gathered from when Armando Moreno was talking, the team seems to kind of be in a better headspace so far this year. Obviously, it's the second game of the season, but and technically we're still undefeated.
Hey,
As
we
far
take
as
we take that.
yeah. So even though it's easy to kind of get hung up on the fact that yes, we were up 4-1 and still left points on the field at home. It's not lost on them that we're weeks ahead of where we were at this point last year already. And I think that it's good that we've had a chance to kind of get the scoring monkey off our back early on. The team knows that they can find the net. I think it took us like 8 matches to get to 6 goals last year.
Yeah.
And so, here we are at 2 right off the way. And I think that it's good to see that everyone's kind of enjoying themselves right now. And the results need to get better, but I think the play has been good. And it seems like the players do too. They know that they can compete this year. I think they've left last year behind them, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. No, it does feel a lot more positive around the team. I think, given the fact that we have 2 points on the board, which I can't even remember when our second point of the season came last year, probably like 8 or 9 games into the season. But anyways, the mood around the team being positive is only going to do good things. And coming into a week where we've got a couple of games, the last thing you need is for like dropped heads and all of that stuff to start impacting results, because Derby, all of that. I mean, speaking of, now I'm thinking back, the last time we were in Albuquerque, speaking of letting the moment get to you, that was the Derby last season in Albuquerque, 2-1 lead with, entering entering stoppage time at the end of the game, and then somehow contriving to lose 3-2. So we'll get to the Derby in a little bit. First things first, though, Locomotive, small matter of the US Open Cup game on Wednesday against Harpos FC, Boulder, Colorado. Amateur team. Locomotive in the first round by virtue of their league finish last year. That's a new feature of the Open Cup, is USL Championship teams that did well start in the third round. USL Championship teams that did shit start in the first round. So we are in the latter, the latter group. So first time that Locomotive's playing a team from outside of the USL system. We've lost to 3 different USL League One teams. Just twice to Union Omaha.
Yeah.
So 3 different teams,
in this
but
godforsaken tournament.
4 losses in a row. I mean, Christian, I guess first and foremost, like, where do you stand as a Locomotive fan with the Open Cup, as someone who's like relatively new to the sport? Like, what's even the vibe with the Open Cup? Like, is this something that you necessarily care about?
MLS got it right, man. That's all I'm gonna say.
just leave.
Yeah,
that's what it's like. Locomotive should just go ahead and hang it up. No, I just find a reason not to compete. It was getting like genuinely disheartening, and I would say, I commented earlier, and I wanted to talk a little bit about, from a pragmatic perspective and from a results perspective, how much balance do you think Wilmer needs to find? Like, or I guess, how much rotation do you think Wilmer needs to make in this match? like, given the fact that we have a derby at the weekend, like, can he afford to start a strong side in the Open Cup in midweek, given it is one of the biggest, league fixtures of the year on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously don't speak for him, can't put words in his mouth, but if I'm in his shoes, and maybe this is me just being cynical and this is a horrible attitude to have, but like, I just feel like doing better in the league at this point, like where this club is right now in its history, in its kind of like in its journey, is way more important than winning a first round Open Cup match.
Yeah.
I also think you probably know more about this than I do, but like, you obviously have to go into every game with the attitude that you need to respect your opponent, you need to win. But just given the hierarchy of where this team is,
Yeah.
you also might be thinking that you can afford to rest some of your whether you decide it's one of your fringe players or one of your star players. I think that you can afford to give up something. I feel like if you feel like you need to start your A team to win this match, then you're probably not in a good spot. Because I mean, on paper, there's no reason that we should lose this match. I think that's fair to say.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I think there's a chance we see some pretty heavy rotation in this match.
Yeah. No, I would totally agree. I think the fact of the matter is that, like, with it being midweek in a competition where I think the calculus changes if you start in the third round. So if you're starting in the third round as a USL championship team and you're like a game, a win away from MLS teams entering the competition, like that sort of thing, where you could maybe go get sort of a high profile game, or maybe get a high profile game at home, even against like MLS competition, then maybe you take the risk. The reality for Locomotive is that we got to win 2 games just to get to the top half of the USL championship being in the tournament. Like, we're not even, like, we're starting so early on that we really can't afford. I mean, the season's long enough as it is. Couple more games. We add in, obviously, we'll talk about down the road, we'll talk about Jägermeister Cup, which is like new competition this year. So these can start to add up, particularly in a squad that's only 25 players. Like, we are like about as thin as you could possibly be, and still competing or whatever. So I think that is something that they're going to take into consideration. I think they have to make changes. The issue with these are sort of trap games in the Open Cup, because, and there are a couple of people in my comments who are like, well, if Locomotive doesn't like at least put 4 up on these amateurs, like, then what are you even doing? And I would say, like, we need to be a little bit careful in like how we characterize these amateur teams. One, because like the road that they take to get to the Open Cup is typically pretty intense in terms of they've been playing qualifiers for a long time, like, just to get here. So they've won a lot of like pressure games to get the chance to be on this stage. Now it's against other amateur opposition. Granted, like, I'll give you all that. And like, there's been a lot of USL teams that make big changes, go into these games and think, it's amateurs, like, we need to just like be able to get the job done. And they get taught a lesson. Like, I mean,
teams win these, like, those amateur teams win these games sometimes, and you just hope it doesn't happen to you.
Exactly. And so I do think like we'll probably see a young lineup from Locomotive. And I think like Locomotive fans should expect it to be a game. Now, I'm not saying that like, hey, our talent could show and it could just be like, we could see these guys off, like, no problem. I'm not saying it like there won't be a gulf in quality or something like that. But I think if we're expecting it to be a walkover, that will be a problem. Like, because for Harpos, this is their Super Bowl. This is the biggest game of their season. They are a pub team, like self-described. But they're also a pub team that plays at like 7,000 feet elevation and is going to come in like extremely fit, extremely like ready to go. And they're a team that like has history in the competition as well. It's been a little bit since they have made it like to this round, because they've actually been like knocked out in qualifiers like the last couple of rounds, which I think shows how competitive it can be like in the amateur levels, like just to get in the competition. But them being back, they have a pretty decent like cult following out in Colorado. Not to say that they'll like travel super well or something like that, but I think it is just it's a team that people know about. It's a team with history in the competition, and I would largely just be concerned about the fact that if Locomotive's looking past it to the Derby, like they could get caught out again. Because I think we've been guilty of this in the past, where we haven't started our strongest team, and League One teams have often not just beat us, but like beat us pretty bad. Like we haven't really even been in these games. Like any year, like have we even scored a goal? We've scored like
last year. We went to penalties. I will say that much.
Oh, that's right. I did forget about it. So that's the closest.
But we didn't score. It was 0-0 when we went
0-0. That's right. Yeah, I straight up blocked that. That game is like gone. that was deleted. I freed up hard drive space with deleting that game from my memory. So yeah, I think like there's a definite danger to looking past this game. If we think that it's like easy win, like because we're playing amateur opposition, because I think we could get caught out. But I do really want, like, I want people to get a chance. I want to see like rotation, because we've got a big league game, and that's the reality. I don't think we can afford to not make changes. Especially this early in the season, we can't be risking like overuse injuries, like, 4 games into the season. But I would just caution everybody to think, like, if you think it's going to be a walkover just because, like, this is the biggest game of their season, and they will absolutely like give everything to get a win over a professional team, because that is like such a feather in their cap. So yeah, I would just caution everybody to think like, oh, we're gonna hang 4 or 5 on them. It's like, let's
try and score 1.
Yeah, let's just try to get past them. Okay. Let's not write it off as easy. And I would say, like, just because they give us a game is not a knock on Locomotive. Like, if Locomotive do, like, play a close game and get through, I wouldn't attach, a lot to like, oh, Locomotive must blow them away for it to be even acceptable or whatever. It's like, these guys are going to be fighting like with everything to get a result, because it's
they're playing with house money.
Exactly. There's literally nothing to lose. So yeah. Well, that's that. I mean, with the Open Cup and then the Derby, obviously we expect Wilmer to kind of keep his strength in reserve for the Open Cup, and then obviously start a full strength lineup in Albuquerque. New Mexico escaped Vegas with a very, very late winner, and off the back of their loss in Sacramento, week 1, they've played 2 close games, but they were able to find, I want to say it was like very late, this the goal that ended up winning it.
I think it was like the last action.
Yeah. New Mexico, in terms of the makeup of the squad, it's actually, I mean, they returned a pretty decent chunk of their players from last year, but I guess the players to keep an eye out for, obviously Zico Bailey in midfield. Greg Hurst is still leading the line for them up top, and he's already got 2 goals this season. And then Mackenzie Gaines is one of their newer additions who he's got a goal again already this year. But and then Mukwele Akale was one of sort of their breakout players last year, having joined from Tormenta in League One before last season. So yeah, I would say a mix of sort of the next generation of New Mexico United, but a lot of familiar and say unwelcome faces among.
Daniel Bruce will find his way onto the fucking field to piss us off.
Of course he will. Yeah, absolutely. But the I guess the name of the game in the Derby, especially in Albuquerque, will always be like try to escape with what you can. Given that it's always going to be back and forth, it feels like it's always kind of chaotic. Form goes out the window, etc. All those cliches about derbies, but with these, 2 draws to start the season, is a draw on the road in Albuquerque still like, do you still take that if it's on offer?
Yeah, with like the exception of like a playoff spot or like a title on the line, I will always take a draw in New Mexico.
Yeah.
You've gotta grab that and run.
Yeah. I think it'll be a very interesting game. They play basically like a pretty straight up 4-3-3. So it'll be a little bit like how I guess like not dissimilar to how, well, I guess Colorado Springs like lined up in the opening match. So it'll be interesting to see how like who gets the nod. And I guess the question will be about Eric Calvillo's availability. So was there any inkling based on conversations around the press box?
No, not really. Not really. No, I didn't press too much into it, and I didn't really get anything involuntarily.
Sure. No, that's that was one that I think they said he was like day to day, or it was a game time decision, I think was what they called it in week
Last
1.
week, yeah.
So obviously for him to like not make the bench again, it's obviously stuck around. So hopefully, we'll pretty much bank on not seeing Eric in midweek, obviously. But hopeful that he'll be back for the Derby. And then I was trying to think if there were any other fitness concerns in the squad, but I think more or less right now we're at least
I think that's everyone, yeah. Well, so we won't have Jamali.
Oh, yep, good call. Yeah, so we'll be down Jamali
for Wednesday or Friday.
We'll be down Jamali Waite, and Noah Dolenmeyer also is going to be traveling with the Dominican Republic squad.
Hold on, you can call me completely ignorant, but he's on our team still.
Yeah, but he got called up by the Dominican Republic. So
what the fuck? I must have missed that.
That was what caught me out. Was I had no idea that Noah Dolenmeyer was Dominican.
See now, like I saw him one way, but now that you say that, when I look at him, I see him another way.
The fade hits
it
different
sense now.
You're like, man, this white guy like really loves his fades.
Yep, it makes sense.
No, that's funny. So yeah, Noah Noah will be on international duty. Jamali Waite will be on international duty. Frank DeRoma suspended. Now, since it's a second yellow, it's typically just a 1-game suspension, so he shouldn't miss more than that. But yeah, it does limit the availability and also sort of makes Wilmer's choices in midweek a little tougher too, because he's going to have to probably use, by virtue of we only have so many players, like he may have to use players in midweek that are now going to be also understudying, sort of in the Derby out of necessity.
Yeah, and maybe we'll see, the debut of Wonderkin Kenneth Hoban too. He's a defender though, right? He is a defender,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Kenneth Hoban, we could see that could be an Open Cup. I don't know. Can he play on school nights or what's the
Yeah, that's interesting.
And then between I would kind of expect Emiliano Rodriguez to make a
Frank Lopez. That was the other one that
that's right.
That was a game time call last week.
And did he didn't make the bench, I'm assuming, last week. So both of them having fitness issues. Because Frank Lopez would be, obviously we haven't missed him as much. Well, we don't really know what we're missing because we haven't seen him, yet for this team. But it is a question mark of when those two will be back, since they haven't made a squad yet, let alone like made it onto the pitch. So, so yeah, question marks still around the fitness there, and yeah. So I mean, big game Wednesday in the Open Cup to see if Locomotive can get their first win, and then one of the biggest games of the season on Saturday. So lots to look forward to over the next couple of days for Locomotive fans.
It's gonna be a hectic next 5 days, but I think we're really gonna see what kind of team we've got by the end of it.
Yeah, there'll definitely be a lot of questions answered, I guess you would say, about character and what sort of stuff this team is made of over the next few days. But well, hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. If you've found us for the first time, you can find our podcast on all the podcast players of your choosing, and you can also find us on Twitter at Seriously Loco. So find us over there. I haven't made a Blue Sky yet, so I don't know. Christian, should I make a Seriously Loco Blue Sky?
I mean, you've got your hands full, I think, but it's up to you.
No, all good. Cool. Well, yeah, check us out there, and subscribe and rate and review the podcast. And we will see you guys probably after the Derby, unless something absolutely insane happens in the Open Cup. You'll probably see us after the Derby. But until then, stay loco.